Well, in just a moment, we'll be having that conversation with the guests you've already seen, but just as a reminder of what we're chatting or discussing about, and that has to do with the NNPCL, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. Guys, we were all excited after successive deadlines being missed in terms of the revamping or turnaround maintenance of our refineries. We understand about $1.5 billion was spent. You can do the math as to what that stands, depending on what time you're doing the exchange rate. But it's quite a big amount of money. Well, there are two refineries, or three in that sense, that were being worked on, the Port Harcourt and Warri refineries. The Port Harcourt refineries has the 150 and the 60, which was the old one, and then the new one. And then they were giving us date under military. It's going to come on stream. And then we got tired of coming on stream, and then they started avoiding giving us deadline. Well, good news to the effect that eventually we saw activities at the refineries, and they say it has come on stream, and before we know, that's a 60,000 capacity, and then we now had the Warri refinery. But certain people were saying at that time that something is not panning out right with this refinery, that they are blending. They are not, the fractional distillation cannot really refine crude straight to PMS. Well, it took some documents to leak. They now say, yes, there's no crime in blending in that sense. Gave all kinds of explanation, but some people kept insisting that nothing really was going on. Well, they were back and forth as to whether something was going on. Videos were sent, reporters were taken there. But good news, we were saying whether is we gave you money to buy us a Rolls Royce and went to buy a Keke Marwa, as long as we are moved from one point to the other, let's just stay with the concept of movement. Now, 2 months down the line, that refinery that was spent a lot of money in turnaround maintenance is not functioning. Initially, when it was, they said it was supposed to be 1 month. Now it's 2 months down there. So the question is, who is lying to us? What is being told to us? Or is it that we don't have the right information? Bayo Ojulare, who is the new CEO of the NNPCL, has a lot of responsibility. First, I must give him kudos to the effect that we now have a monthly dashboard of the NNPCL to say, this is how much we made this month, this is how much we produced this month in terms of all the petroleum products, at least a flashpoint of whether it's crude oil, condensate. More like a dashboard. If you go to the NNPCL handle, you're going to see every month there's just a single page that gives you an idea of the activities of our state refinery. But that is commendable. But the question has to be asked as to what has happened to this refinery. Were we scammed, or is just an exaggeration of the crisis? What exactly is happening? That our refineries have not been working for 2 months. And then the NNPCL itself, by now that it's privatized or is no longer, let's put it the right way, it's a limited liability company. We are supposed to be quoted on the stock exchange after 2 years, according to the PIA. What has happened to that in terms of IPO? Because some of us will also buy if they start selling, because we see the potential if it's done properly. So guys, these are the issues. The vagueness. As much as everybody wants to vilify Mele Kyari, there's one thing he did that I commend him for, which was the effect that for the first time under him, we had audited accounts of the NNPCL. We moved from minus 800 billion to profits to about 3.3 billion in about a couple of years, because we could see the books. But at the end of the day, when we saw the books, we saw that the gearing ratio is very disturbing. So many things were quite disturbing. We cannot speak to facts as to the disturbing facts, and all of that. So that's why I want to have this conversation, guys.
Oh, yes. It's one that must be had. It concerns everyone. And we're joined on the program this morning by Mr. Iche Doko, who's the Crude Oil Refinery Owners Association of Nigeria spokesperson, Skoran, as well as oil and gas expert, Mr. Olabode Shomi. Both gentlemen are in our Abuja studio joining us this morning. Gentlemen, thank you for being a part of this all-important conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good morning.
Yeah, good morning, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have us here.
Thank you. You know, the fact that crude oil is dirty doesn't mean that the industry and all of the workings should be dirty, should be opaque and just quite messy. That's what we've seen so far. It looks like we take 1 step forward and 10 steps back. You know, just recently people were celebrating flame test at the refinery to import Harcourt. And as much as some said, well, it's something to celebrate, it was just embarrassing to see that being celebrated at a time when we should be way ahead. So let me start from the hard question, gentlemen. Should we once and for all just privatize these refineries? I know that, well, it's off our necks. We've found a way to move this to people who can handle it better. Is now the time to have that conversation or not? And I'll start with Mr. Joko on this.
Yeah. So I have to go?
Yes, please, Mr. Joko, you first, then Mr. Shomi.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Sometime in 2012 or 2011, under the Jonathan administration, when the subsidy debate was hot, it became abundantly clear that that running the refineries as a state institution in Nigeria, as at that time, wasn't going to work. It became abundantly clear that the government had no business in running a complex institution like the refineries. And I think there was a consensus that private sector players should be allowed in mass. That was when you had an upsurge in the clamor for private refinery practitioners. Fast forward to 2025, you have seen that we have over 5 private refineries running here in Nigeria, and what has been the state of the public-owned refineries, your guess is as good as mine, and we are here in this conversation today. Nothing lays more credence to the fact that leaving the refineries as a publicly run institution in the hands of a public company, a government-owned entity, it's counterproductive. So I would want to say that it's far behind time. It's almost too late in the day to have this conversation. They should have long before now privatized these refineries. Not just privatized, in fact, we have sold it off. And in some of our engages, we have mentioned that it is better off if these refineries are sold off, right, and proceeds be used as intervention to private actors, okay, who would give more value.
So, Mr. Shobi, same question to you.
Okay. Good morning once again. Thanks to be here. I think for my own take, when it comes to the privatization of state institutions or state whatever you have, what matters more is not so much as whether it's privatized or not, but should it be privatized, the process and the people that will privatize it. Decades ago, I was somehow involved significantly with the privatization that took place within the telecom sector, because I was working for Ericsson at the time. And I was on the fringes when the power sector privatization also took place. And those are tales of the same process, but one was a significant success, and we can't say so much for the other. Now, when it comes to the privatization, technically, the advantages there are things like it's going to be run better, primarily because it's going to come into private hands. The culture is going to be significantly better because you are not going to have civil service culture that currently exists and all that. But there is also the other side, where because this is a social service, in the sense that just like the power sector, even if the private sector people feel government will still must compulsorily come to take responsibility. So there has to be a balance. But given the hodgepodge of stories that have come in, just like you said, we have cases where the refinery was working, then it's no longer working, and there are issues. Maybe there should be a fresh pair of eyes that will look into the running of the whole place. Just maybe. But it is important that a proper assessment is done along with today's realities before a decision is taken.
All right. Before we even continue to explore privatization, perhaps we should look at critically at the expenditure of $1.5 billion turnaround maintenance and ask why it is not working in the first place. And I'm bringing this to you, Mr. Idoko. From the professional perspective, a past MD of the Port Harcourt Refinery had placed question mark on the grand launch, saying it is all deceit, that the catalytic component of the refinery is not working, and the Port Harcourt Refinery cannot operate until that is done. From the inside information that you have, after the grand launch, did the Port Harcourt Refinery actually produce petrol, even though, even at the blending level?
Okay, so I would want to make something clear here in terms of how we in Coron relate with NNPC. NNPC is not a member of the Crude Refiners Association of Nigeria, even though we have made overtures to them privately and also on public forums such as this for them to join us. And as such, there are very, very little we can speak to in terms of their internal processes. One of the anchors had mentioned earlier on at the intro that the turnaround maintenance of the Port Harcourt Refinery, like most other operations of the NNPC refineries, have been shrouded by opaqueness. The same, and it's the same with us from our end. We don't know quite a number of things that had and how their processes have worked. So I won't be able to speak to what had been done and what had not been done. But what I can say here was that at the initial inception of that turnaround maintenance, Coron had argued that rather than expend this amount of money on a refinery that a lot had been sunk into and wasn't successful, that that fund should be set aside as an intervention fund for refineries whose functionality had been proved. We were producing then. We had the Aradel, we had Walter Smith at the time, and then we had OPAC and the Port who had just completed. And that such monies could be channeled to them and many other refineries at the time that were coming upstream to build their catalytic reformers to be able to produce PMS. So to your question, I wouldn't know if they actually produced PMS at the time, but then what we knew from the onset was that it was a very, very serious gamble and the risk was high.
All right. Mr. Sherman, let's bring it back to you, because at the end of the day, it looks like, in fact, I think we're talking to one of the players in the downstream sector. As at then, they were very excited, just like all of us were excited, especially the Port Harcourt Refinery. And we asked straight questions from a layman's point of view. Did you lift from ex-depot? Did you lift from the refinery into your trucks? Just, you're asking questions as though you're suspecting there's something fishy. Later on, when all of this happened, the language kind of modified. So I want you to maybe tell us how if you were to advise the NNPCL as far as this issue of the refinery is concerned. First, in terms of communication. Second, in terms of being as open as possible. What will those things be? Because right now, the way it feels is to the effect that it looks like literally everything they say, nobody believes. Look at what happens with the committee and the issue around 201 trillion, which for me was perhaps a misunderstanding of corporate accounting, because there are two sides of the same transaction in a statement of or balance sheet, as it is called. So where I'm going to with all of this, that there's limited trust with state-owned oil company like the NNPCL. And so whatever they do is looked at with a lot of suspicion. How can we correct that and build better confidence? And again, I want to repeat that question. Isn't it time for us to let go of these refineries and just collect the money we can collect by privatizing that asset?
Okay, thank you. I think for want of a better word, the lack of trust with state institutions is not limited to NNPC at all. It is something that is a public sector issue. Governors have their issues. The legislators have their issues. People in sports, the ministry, they have their issues. Health have their issues. I mean, you can spread the thing around if you are trying to talk about trust in all those places. So it's a governance issue, and it's an issue that is fundamental to how governance takes place in Nigeria. But having said that, when it comes to that other question, the aspect of the communication aspect of NNPC, that is going to be a marriage or a merger or a meeting of minds between what NNPC wants to achieve and what you want to know. Let us not forget that by definition, the whole idea of corporate communications is to bridge the gap between the wanted perception and the current perception. So there's a perception that an organization wants, be it NNPC, be it Shell. There's a wanted perception, and there is their current perception. And bridging that gap is the essence of communication. And politics does come in. It is not impossible, in fact, it is not impossible, let's put it that way, that there are some things that NNPC may not want the people to know, maybe because it doesn't help the business, and it happens everywhere. But because there is a need for a perception of trust to be built for people, then there is a need for a greater communication, or should I say a better communication strategy from them. Now, to the facts on the ground, as far as I know, so this is information available to me, which also is limited because I am not in NNPC nor at the refinery site. What you have is a case of an old engine for which they repair some part of it, everything works, and then they discover some other thing, and then something that was initially working collapses. Let's put it this way. My father had Peugeot 404 back in the late 60s, stroke early 70s. And the car was parked for decades. So imagine we want to get the car moving now, and finally we get the engine started. It is possible that when we get on the road, the fuel pump will fail. And after that, we repair that, and we move for another distance. Maybe it will now be the oil pump. You know, when you have engines that have been idle for so long, there will be different components of it that will be coming up. But the whole idea is that they need to keep at it. They need to continue until they get the whole thing to be oiling and to be functional. So it may not necessarily have been that everything was about showmanship, as one of the players is alleging. It may just have been that they were encountering new challenges that they did not know, and they probably felt embarrassed making to the fore. But that is my understanding of what the issues are.
Well, Mr. Shomi, that would be understandable if you took that Peugeot to a Soliu by the roadside, you know, just try to patch things up. It's understandable, the ones that hit it and say, yeah, I know what is wrong with this vehicle. It will be understandable if after fixing something, maybe the carburetor, then the fuel pump has issues, you fix that, then, you know, it is a shock absorber or something. It's understandable if you take it to a roadside mechanic in that sense, and no offense to roadside mechanics. I think they do a lot of good job, you know, on their day. But this is a nation's refinery we're talking about. First off, not just anybody should handle it. It shouldn't just be done piecemeal. We shouldn't just do it haphazard. It should be done well by the very best. And there should be transparency and accountability. Why? Because it's taxpayers' money that is being used. If not taxpayers' money, it is our common wealth that is being used for that. So we should get the very best in terms of the service put into it and the information coming from it. I'm sure you understand what I mean. The NNPCL is not the sole owner of the refineries. It is the Nigerian people, and they deserve to have the information. So, Mr. Doko, maybe we learn from the practice in your own field, because you said you try to reach out time and again, and they don't want to be a part of it. Do the shareholders, in that sense, do they have a right to have all of the information about the refineries?
Of course, definitely. This is not even an industry thing. It's simply a corporate governance thing. The CAC provides that for a company that is limited by shares, the shareholders are actually the owners of the company, and from time to time they would need to demand to know what's happening. within the organization. But before I go on, I would want to speak to the issue of the analogy of an old engine that my friend and colleague had just alluded to. So the issue is that why would you want to keep an old Peugeot 504 and rehabilitate the engine at an exorbitant rate when you can easily get a new Toyota Camry or a new Honda Accord or a new Kia that would serve you, and you won't suffer an engine breakdown? I think that's the dilemma we're faced with. We don't know why there is a fixation in trying to fix a technology that is very, very old, and that we have over time, not once, not twice, not thrice, tried to fix, and then it hasn't served us, and the people are paying dearly for it. At a time when we have paucity of funds, the government is struggling. We are laboring under the weight of FX challenges as a result of importation of product. The cost of petroleum products is driving our headline inflation to the skies. For us, we like every other Nigerian, because we are also in this sector, we can't understand that level of fixation. And we have always asked that the NNPC should be more transparent, because my colleague also just mentioned that there should be a communication strategy that works, right? And NNPC could have done any other thing, but haven't gotten their public communications right at all. And that is hugely responsible for the death of public trust whatsoever they do. And it's peculiar to NNPC. We think that they should have managed it well. When Mele Kyari came up and promised that this time it was going to be a different thing, a lot of Nigerians and a lot of us that were industry experts had a lot of optimism, thinking that, okay, they would do something differently. Yeah. But unfortunately, from what we see, it's still the same old.
Yeah. And, you know, there are so many other questions, you know, in that space as well. We could talk about what seems to be the total abdication of responsibility as far as accountability is concerned. Why are the ministers, you know, in charge not speaking to Nigerians, you know, about these issues, the inability of the refinery to come back on stream even after the shutdown for 1 month repair and other related issues? But, you know, clearly, as we always say, it's an ongoing conversation on the program and indeed on all our other platforms. So, must thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming through on this particular one. We've been talking with Mr. Bode Showomi, oil and gas expert, who joined us from our Abuja studio, and of course Mr. Eche Idoko, Crude Oil Refinery Owners Association of Nigeria, Koran Publicity Secretary. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming through.
Yeah, thank you.
The pleasure is always mine.
Yeah, thank you very much.